The studio lights burned hot, the cameras were already rolling, and the air felt heavier than usual. Kellyanne Conway sat across from Jasmine Crockett, her face tight, her eyes sharp, her body leaning forward as if ready for a fight. You could almost feel the storm building. And then it happened, the moment that would shake the internet in less than 30 seconds. This wasn't just another debate. It was the kind of clash that forces people to choose sides, that makes headlines, that leaves millions talking long after the cameras go dark. On one side of the table sat Kellyanne Conway, a seasoned political fighter, famous for her sharp comebacks and fiery style. She had spent decades inside the toughest battles in Washington, shaping messages, defending presidents, and tearing through interviews like a storm. She came in dressed for war, armed with years of experience and a reputation for never backing down. For her, politics was combat, and the loudest voice usually won. Across from her sat Jasmine Crockett, younger, calmer, but no less prepared. She wasn't carrying the weight of decades in the political machine. Instead, she carried something different, a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Crockett had built her career not on attacks, but on listening, defending, and standing steady when others tried to knock her off balance. She didn't come into the studio to out-yell her opponent. She came in with something stronger: control. This wasn't just two women debating voting rights. It was a collision between two worlds, old-school rage versus new-school calm. The kind of face-off that turns into a viral moment before anyone even realizes it's happening. And what America was about to witness would forever change the way people thought about political debates. The host barely finished his opening line when Kellyanne Conway pounced. She didn't wait for a question, didn't let the air settle. Her voice was already raised, sharp like a blade cutting through the studio. This so-called voting rights bill is nothing but a federal takeover of elections, she declared, pointing across the table at Jasmine Crockett as if she were delivering a closing argument in a courtroom. The intensity in her voice made the sound engineer wince through his headphones. Conway wasn't here for conversation. She was here to dominate. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. Hands folded neatly, eyes steady, she replied in a calm, measured tone, "Thank you for sharing your view, Kellyanne." Just 12 words, polite, unshaken, but it was enough to light a fuse. Conway's face reddened. She was used to opponents snapping back, shouting, fighting her fire with fire. But Crockett's calmness felt like a wall she couldn't break through. The host tried to guide the discussion back to the bill. "Can we talk about the specific provisions?" he asked. But Conway cut him off immediately. "No. I am tired of freshman politicians pretending they know this law." She leaned forward, her voice rising, her fingers stabbing the air. "I was running presidential campaigns when she was still in law school. Don't lecture me." Instead of reacting, Crockett tilted her head slightly, almost like a teacher waiting for a student to finish. Her voice remained steady. "I'd love to hear the specific examples of voter fraud you're worried about. What evidence are you pointing to?" It was the question Conway wasn't ready for. Her eyes narrowed. "The evidence is everywhere," she snapped. "Dead people voting. Illegal immigrants voting. Ballot harvesting." Her words tumbled over each other, louder and louder, until her pitch cracked. Behind the cameras, the crew exchanged quick glances. This wasn't the calm policy talk they had expected. This was a storm. The control room lit up with activity. Producers whispered, "Keep rolling, this is gold." Social media teams were already clipping the exchange for live posts. Crockett, still calm, leaned in slightly. "Could you name one specific case?" "Just one." The silence after that question felt heavier than all of Conway's shouting. She blinked, searched her notes, then waved her hand dismissively. "It's all over the news. You know it. Everyone knows it." Crockett nodded, her smile faint but steady. "If everyone knows, then sharing one example should be easy." That simple, calm line hit harder than any insult. Conway slammed her hand on the desk, the water glass shaking beside her. "Don't play games with me," she shouted, her hair shaking as she gestured wildly. "This bill is chaos. This bill destroys election integrity. And you, Congresswoman, you are helping Democrats cheat." The host froze. The accusation, spoken on live TV, was heavy. The crew behind the cameras looked stunned. Even Conway seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but she doubled down, her voice rising again. And still, Crockett stayed calm. She took a sip of water, glanced at her notes, then looked Conway in the eye. "Kellyanne, I think our viewers deserve facts, not talking points. Which section of the bill are you referring to?" Her tone wasn't condescending. It wasn't smug. It was calm, steady, and professional, the exact opposite of Conway's frantic shouting. That difference made the contrast impossible to ignore. Conway looked like she was unraveling, while Crockett looked like she was teaching. The tension grew thicker with every passing second. Conway's voice climbed higher. The crew adjusted their mics to keep the sound from breaking. The host tried again to step in, but Conway snapped, "Don't interrupt me." She turned her focus back to Crockett. "You think because you stay calm, you're winning this? You think you can sit there with your lawyer voice and act superior?" Crockett tilted her head again, speaking softly but clearly. "I don't see this as winning or losing. I see it as an opportunity to talk about how we make democracy stronger." The words landed like a punch in reverse. They weren't loud, but they hit with force because of the calmness behind them. Conway's face turned deeper red. Her hands shook. The contrast was brutal, one woman screaming herself hoarse, the other calmly asking questions and giving steady answers. In the control room, the social media screen showed the live chat exploding. "Conway's losing it. Crockett is unshakable. This is painful to watch." And yet, the conflict was only just reaching its peak. Conway wasn't finished. She leaned forward again, eyes blazing, voice cracking. "You want to destroy this country. You want to flood it with fake votes. That's your agenda." The studio fell silent for a beat. It was an accusation so wild, so extreme, that even the host's jaw tightened. The line between debate and meltdown was being crossed right before everyone's eyes. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett stayed still, calm and steady, waiting for the right moment to deliver the words that would flip this clash upside down. The breaking point came fast. Kellyanne Conway's voice had been rising with every exchange, but now it burst through the ceiling. Her finger jabbed the air, her fist slammed the desk, her words hit like gunfire. "Your problem," she shouted, her face flushed, "is that you think being calm makes you right. You think sitting there with a smile makes you the adult in the room. But I see through you." The outburst echoed across the studio. The cameras caught every frame, Conway leaning forward, red-faced, veins rising on her neck. The crew froze, stunned by what they were watching. And then came the line that nobody expected, the one that would live online forever. "Stop being so reasonable," she screamed. For a moment, silence filled the room. The absurdity of the phrase hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Conway had just yelled at someone for being reasonable. Even she seemed to realize it as the word slipped out, but it was too late. The cameras had already captured it, and the internet would make sure it lived forever. Jasmine Crockett didn't rush to speak. She let the silence stretch, let Conway's meltdown echo in the viewers' minds. Then, in the same calm, steady voice she had used all along, she leaned forward slightly and said, "Kellyanne, I can see you're upset. And I understand why these issues matter so much to you. They matter to me, too. But I believe we can disagree about policy without questioning each other's character or motives." The contrast couldn't have been sharper. On one side of the table, Conway, shaking with rage, voice cracking, hair disheveled, hands trembling. On the other, Crockett, calm, gentle, even compassionate. She wasn't just winning the argument, she was redefining the entire debate. Conway tried to push back. Her voice dropped for a moment, but then she spiked again. "Don't you dare patronize me. You're manipulating people with your lawyer voice. You're making this sound like it's about democracy, but I know what it's really about. Cheating. Power. Corruption." Crockett didn't flinch. Instead, she asked another question, the kind that makes the ground shift. "What part of the bill are you most concerned about? Not what you think I believe, not what you think my motives are. What specific language in the bill do you think is wrong?" Conway's hands shuffled through her notes. The camera zoomed in on her eyes darting back and forth across the papers. The silence grew uncomfortable. Seconds stretched like minutes. For the first time, her voice softened. The provision about voter rolls," she muttered. "States need to be able to clean them." Crockett nodded gently. "I agree. And the bill allows that. In fact, it requires states to remove names immediately after proof of death. The only requirement is to give notice before removing someone who simply changed addresses. Would you like to see the section?" Conway froze. Her face shifted from anger to confusion, from confidence to doubt. She looked down at her notes again, then back at Crockett, then away. I may have misunderstood that part," she said quietly. The studio went dead silent again. Kellyanne Conway, the veteran fighter who had built a career on never admitting fault, had just confessed on live television that she had been wrong. Crockett didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She leaned in with the same calm authority and said, "It's easy to misunderstand complex legislation, especially when we rely on summaries instead of the full text. That's why I always try to read the bills myself before I take a position. Because democracy works better when we base our arguments on facts. That was the kill shot, not delivered in anger, not delivered with mockery, but delivered with patience, clarity, and calm. The audience didn't just see a debate anymore. They saw a masterclass. Conway leaned back in her chair, deflated. The fight had drained out of her. The woman who had marched into the studio ready for battle now sat small, her voice a whisper. "These issues are important to me," she muttered. "They're important to me too," Crockett replied with a warm, steady smile. "That's exactly why we should be able to discuss them respectfully." In the control room, producers were already watching social media explode. The clip of Conway shouting "Stop being so reasonable" was everywhere within minutes. Memes spread like wildfire. Conway screaming while Crockett sipped water calmly, captions like "How to win an argument without raising your voice." Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the moment was unstoppable. But what pushed it over the top wasn't Conway's meltdown. It was Crockett's response. The calm tone, the steady facts, the refusal to take the bait. Her words were already being quoted, turned into graphics, shared as leadership lessons. A civil rights lawyer tweeted, "This is what leadership looks like in 2024, calm, factual, focused on truth." Even political commentators who normally leaned conservative admitted on air, Crockett handled this better than anyone I've seen in years. The climax was clear. Kellyanne Conway's rage had collapsed in on itself, while Jasmine Crockett's calm had risen into a viral moment of strength. And in that single exchange, millions saw what true composure under fire looked like. The cameras cut, but the story was only just beginning. Inside the studio, Kellyanne Conway slumped back in her chair, flipping through her notes as if they might rewrite what had just happened. She had come in ready to dominate. Instead, she walked out looking shaken, her confidence cracked. Across from her, Jasmine Crockett quietly gathered her papers, the same calm she had shown throughout the debate still etched on her face. But while the studio was settling down, the internet was lighting up. Within minutes, clips of the exchange hit social media. Conway's red-faced scream of "Stop being so reasonable" was clipped, memed, and captioned 100 different ways. One viral post paired it with the text, "When your little brother stays calm and you're losing the argument." Another turned Crockett's steady smile into the "This is fine" meme. The comedy spread fast, but what stood out even more was the respect pouring in for Crockett. Twitter threads filled with praise. "This is how you handle aggression. Facts, calm, control." Instagram reels showed side-by-side comparisons of Conway shouting while Crockett stayed poised. On TikTok, users reenacted the debate, one person yelling wildly while another calmly sipped water, capturing the absurdity of the moment. The news cycle picked it up almost instantly. Headlines read, "Conway meltdown versus Crockett composure goes viral." Late-night comedians joked, "Imagine being so angry that someone is too reasonable. That's like yelling at someone for using their inside voice." But beneath the jokes was a serious point. Crockett had just shown America that political debates didn't have to be shouting matches. The reaction wasn't just national. International outlets ran stories on it, framing the clash as a symbol of two styles of democracy: loud, confrontational politics versus calm, fact-based leadership. Commentators in Europe and Canada called Crockett's response presidential. A Japanese newspaper ran the headline, "American Congresswoman wins debate without raising her voice." The impact stretched far beyond the memes. Universities added the clip to political communication lectures. Professors called it the Crockett method, calm authority in the face of aggression. Business trainers began using it in corporate seminars on conflict resolution. Even CEOs weighed in online, saying Crockett's composure was a lesson in leadership under pressure. Meanwhile, the political fallout hit hard. Democratic strategists celebrated, calling Crockett's moment a blueprint for younger leaders. Fundraising spiked as donors praised her poise. Republican strategists, on the other hand, worried. If a veteran like Conway could be dismantled by calm questions and patience, what did that say about their strategy of constant attack? But through all the noise, Crockett stayed consistent. Instead of spiking the ball, she posted a short video message, "Thank you to everyone who watched today. This is why facts matter. This is why respect matters. We can disagree without tearing each other apart. That's how democracy works best." The clip itself went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was simple, steady, and sincere. For Conway, the moment stuck. She wasn't finished as a commentator, but the meltdown followed her everywhere. Bookers hesitated, knowing clips of her shouting could overshadow any new argument she made. Every time she appeared on TV, Someone in the comments reminded her of the day she yelled at someone for being too reasonable. For Crockett, it was the opposite. She was no longer just a freshman politician. Overnight, she became a national figure, the face of a new kind of political communication. Calm, fact-based, relatable. She was invited on news shows, podcasts, panels. She gained millions of followers online. People weren't just watching her moment, they were asking for more of her style. The debate was over, but its meaning was bigger than one TV segment. It showed that in an age where politics often feels like a shouting contest, there is power in composure. That sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the one people trust. And that true strength doesn't always come from raising your voice, it comes from standing firm, staying calm, and letting the truth do the work. So the question now belongs to the viewers. Do you believe the future of politics belongs to the loudest voice, or to the calmest one? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video with someone who needs to see what real leadership looks like.